Well, good evening. This is Jeff Heggie. This is the Inner Circle Mastermind for October 30th, 2019. I'd like to welcome all that are on the call and welcome anyone that's listening on the recording afterwards. So thank you. I watched the beginning of a movie today that I just want to talk about for a little bit. I haven't seen the movie, but actually after watching the first 5-6 minutes, I think I would like to. Is Jason Statham. In a movie called The Transporter. I don't know if any of you have seen it, but just give you a bit of a rundown of what happens in the first few minutes of it. Is he pulls up in front of this bank in a BMW 7 Series, and at a certain time, it shows the clock, certain time, and these robbers come running out of the bank and jump in his vehicle. And the first thing he says, they're yelling, "Go, go, go." They want to get out of there. He's their getaway man. And he says, rule number 1, never change the deal. And they're all looking at him. He says, 3 men, 254 kilos. And the robber that's in the front seat says, this is the new deal. We've got an extra guy. This is what's happening. Let's go, let's go. And he says, no, with the extra kilos, it means I won't get the mileage and everything that I had allotted for the fuel, and we won't make it to our destination. We'll get caught and whatnot. And the robber in the front seat pulls out a gun and puts it to his head and says, let's go, or you're going to get a bullet in the head. And he says, who's going to drive? Guy in the back says, shoot him, I'll drive. And he says, not without the ignition code, you won't. Long story short, the robber turns around, shoots one of his guys. They throw him out. They're at 3 men, 254 kilos, and they start their car chase with the cops. What I was going to with that, we'll get into in a minute, but where I want you to think is, do you know that you are the best option for your customers? And are you communicating that to them? And this is why you have to have your market dominating position, which would be your ignition code, that you are their only option, that you are the real option if they want to be doing either the service or the product that you're offering. You're the option they need to go with. And so that's what I want to talk about a little bit tonight. And if you recall, if you were on the calls back in the end of September and the first call of October, I talked about my e-learning marketing system and some of the things that we offer through that. And I actually went through a couple of the lessons that are from the e-learning marketing system, and we taught how to make your market dominating position. And so I just want to talk a little bit more about that tonight. And first of all, what is a market dominating position? So directly from my notes from the e-learning marketing system, it's simply a value added customer perceived benefit or a combination of benefits that differentiates you from your competitors, and does so in a strong enough manner that makes your business the logical choice in the minds of your prospects and customers. So that's what I want you to be thinking about tonight as we go through some of these things. What is your market dominating position? You know, when I look at what I do as a business strategist and consultant, I know that my marketing methodologies work, and I know that the results they can get. So that's my ignition code. And I know that I can use that to draw a line in the sand on what I do and what I don't do. And so that also helps you figure out who your customers are going to be, because you can't be everything to everyone. You've got to decide in your business what you want to do and who you want to serve, and carve out that niche, and you've got to forget about the others. And because that's where you're going to draw the line in the sand and put your focus on what niche you're looking at. I'm actually in the middle of reading a new book, this one right here, Copywriting Secrets by Jim Edwards. And he's got some great things in there. And actually, I was just last night reading a part that he was talking about niching down who you're focusing on in your advertising. And so I just want to read a little bit from what he said. He says, people will buy from you. More specifically, people will buy from you one person at a time. You have to know who these people are and what they have in common that makes them belong to that group. And he narrows it down to 3 levels. He says there's 3 levels. The first level is very broad. An example is real estate. This is too broad to run ads and to write meaningful copy. So then when you get a little deeper, the second level is a sub niche, and it's a little narrower than the first one, and maybe that's real estate investor. And then within the sub niche, you can go deeper into a micro niche, which gives you a little more laser focus, which could be a flipper, a buy and hold, hard money lender, different things. So for example, this one, maybe it's a flipper. And when you know that that's what you're focused on, it's easier to target your advertising. It's easier to target the copywriting you're doing. And so he gives a very good example in there of how you can niche down your target audience. And it depending on what industry you're in, what business you're in, you're going to do that at different levels. But you need to know who that is. And you need to know who you are and who you want to be. And then you've got to be willing to draw the line in the sand and say, this is what we do and this is what we don't do. And then you'll be able to move on from there. And so what you want to be able to do is create a position in the customer's mind so that they know when they're looking for a specific product that you are the logical choice. And you do that in a number of ways. And if you go back, if you've got any of the previous recordings when I talked about that, or if you're a member of the e-learning marketing system, you can go to those lessons and learn more about it. But there's a number of ways you can do it. And one of it is from internally, are you speaking with power? We talked a little bit about using power last week, and the ability to, as you speak with power, you tend to possess more power, and gives you the ability to stand out more in a crowd, mostly because you don't see a lot of that happening. But I want to go through 11 different topics on this subject and just give you a few ideas on how you can look at some of these things and create that market dominating position. And so one is you have to be specific. The more detail you can convey, the more credible you can become. That's with employees need to be trained well. You need to know what it is that your customers are going to want to know, because when a customer comes in and you don't have the answers, you lose a lot of credibility. You want to know all about your own products, obviously, but you also want to know about your competitors' products. You need to know the entire industry very well. You need to be able to acknowledge the concerns of your prospects. All prospects are going to have different concerns, whether it's the concerns for their situation and why they're looking for your product, or it's concerns they have with your specific type of product. So the more knowledge you have around your service or product, you'll be able to talk through that with them. And then when appropriate, be able to tell a story that supports your market dominating position. When we did this at the end of September, the example I used was Domino's Pizza, and they became very dominant in their market very quick when they were fresh hot pizza in 30 minutes or less. And they definitely talked about it. They really wanted everyone to know what their market dominating position was. It wasn't best pizza in the industry. It wasn't best dining in the industry. It was fresh hot pizza in 30 minutes or less. So be willing to talk about those things. Having a strong opinion, and ask about specific situations and be able to tell how your product fits into that situation, and be an expert and with your product or your market or whatever it is. And when you voice a strong opinion, you can stand out as an expert, be confident in it, and be able to answer all their questions with confidence and have that strong opinion about what your product can do for them because you know it so well. And then tell it like it is. Don't mince words. do you know your elevator pitch? In 10 seconds or less, can you give an elevator pitch that really explains what you do and why they should be buying from you? Um, Again, that's something that we talked about in those e-learning marketing center lessons, but it's something that you've got to be able to do, and you've got to be able to do it every time that you have the opportunity. And then another one is using plain English. Say, just have a normal conversation with people. What you see often is people using industry jargon. And even in, one of our companies, Kodiak Mountain Stone, we've been running that company for 15 years. A lot of the jargon we use within that industry becomes something that we think is normal language. And we've got to often realize that as we're talking to customers, if they're not in the building industry, if they're not a mason, if they're not a home builder, and they're just a homeowner, that some of the language we use might not make sense to them. And so we've got to be very conscious of that. For example, so what we do is we sell manufactured or natural stone for houses and stuff. And when we talk about measuring, we do our measuring in square foot and linear foot. The square footage is for flats, linear footage is for corners. Well, that whole little bit that I explained there is industry jargon. And you need to be able to explain, when I say we measure square feet of flats, you need to explain that the flats are the pieces that go on the surface on the front of the house or whatever the project might be. And then the corners are the 90-degree corner pieces that go around the corners of the project. So you need to be very conscious of what language you're using. Russell Brunson explains this well in his book, Expert Secrets. The example, or what he uses in there, is what he calls a kind of like bridge. So when he finds himself that he's talking about something such as that, instead of using his industry jargon, he'll say it's kind of like, and bring it down to an easier level to understand, so that he's not using the industry jargon. And so we've got to be able to think of that. In Expert Secrets, what Russell explains is you've got to speak at a third grade level when you're selling. And so you've really got to be conscious of that. The next thing is to elevate the attitude. And so speak with passion and conviction about your product, your service, and your business, and let your customers know how you feel about your product or service. Become your customer's advocate by providing them with genuine advice. You should know a lot more about your product, service, and industry than your customer does. And so you should be able to tell them the things that they need to know that probably nobody else is telling them, and just be honest and straight with them. And another one along with that is having the confidence. And being confident doesn't mean you're being cocky. It's a matter of fact. You look at Tiger Woods at the peak of his career. He wouldn't mince words. He would, in interviews, say, when I'm on my game, no one's going to beat me. And it was a confidence he had because he knew it. Everyone in the field knew that if Tiger was on his game, they weren't going to beat him. And so you've got to be knowledgeable enough and have your market dominating position that you can have that same sort of confidence with your product and service. Be able to, as I talk about using plain English, but also use your power words so that you can paint the right picture for the customer as you're telling. And I mean, going back with Russell Brunson again, that's one of the things Russell Brunson is so good at in his marketing, is he's a storyteller. And so if you can use power words to tell a story about your product or service, that's when you can really paint the picture for your client on why they need it and how that's going to fit into their life and their situation. And then the last one is, conceive faults or any downsides that you might have. You actually gain a lot of credibility when you'll be straight up with customers and tell them that there's certain situations that maybe our product falls short in this situation, but because of all these other things, we're still your best choice. But when you're honest with your customers, you will gain a lot of credibility that way. And that's when you're able to draw the line in the sand and really say, we are the best choice because of this, this, and this. So those are just 11 things I wanted to go through there. It's a quick list, but just wanted to go back on that just because I think it's so important to be able to recognize what your market dominating position is, recognize who your client is. It's often you talk to entrepreneurs or business owners, and especially in their infant years, they want to serve everybody. And you find that the more you try to serve everybody, the less successful you're going to be because you're not focused on that group that you need to be focused on. And you really need to figure that out with your market dominating position and with your figuring out who your true client is. You hear a lot in the marketing world, you hear a lot of people calling it your avatar. So figuring out your avatar through demographics is one way. It might be 45-year-old white males might be the demographic niche that you're looking at. But getting a lot more specific and getting into the psychographic parts, knowing more specifically, not necessarily where they live or age or those things. It's the other hot buttons that really are the ones that you need to focus on. And it requires some time and it requires work and effort, but it is definitely something that'll pay off in the end. And again, the book I was talking about earlier, Copywriting Secrets, it's people like that are writing copyright for ads for a living that are doing the test markets that know how all this comes together. And so there's great advice in that. Just for a plug for his book. And if you go to my website, jeffheggie.com, on the affiliate links, you can actually get this book for free. You have to pay the shipping on it. But if you're in business, it's definitely something worth taking a look at because it's got some great advice in there on how to write copy and just to understand the mental part, what goes into writing copy for advertising and what goes into everything on why people buy things. Also, the e-learning marketing system, if you haven't checked it out, if you go to jeffheggiebusines.com/myguidedtour, you can sign up for 4 videos that are basically 4 of the lessons that give you an idea of what it is. And I think you'd really like it. There's a lot of valuable information in there. One of them does talk about your elevator pitch, and just out of those 4 videos, if you don't do the e-learning marketing system, you'll get a lot of value out of those 4 free videos. So definitely suggest taking a look at that. Got a few people on here. If anyone has any thoughts or comments or questions, go ahead and if you want to, I don't know what buttons you have available for you, if you want to raise your hand or whatever in that chat feature. Doesn't look like anyone's. All right, well, thank you again for joining us. And if you have any thoughts or comments, love for you. For those of you that are on this call or the replay and you're not part of the Facebook group, I would love to get more people active in there, just with thoughts, questions, and just a little more of the mastermind stuff going on. But otherwise, thank you, and we will talk to you again next week.